Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining me. This is Kathy, and today I'll be sharing 3 cards using a bunch of different products. The first one that I'll be using is the Easter mini strips from Tailored Expressions with the coordinating die. I'll also be using the Hop to It background stamp, also from Tailored Expressions. I'll also be using the little carrot from the Happy Hoppy stamp set from Gerda Steiner Designs. I'll be using the Hello die from Memento, which I think I picked this up at Michael's. The Blueprints 27 from My Favorite Things, as well as the Stitched Rectangle dies Stacks 1, also from My Favorite Things. So I started out by stamping out the Easter mini strips from Tailored Expressions. I used my stamp platform and stamped the sentiments using VersaFine Onyx Black ink. One thing that I thought was really cool about this stamp and die set is that with the die, you line up the black squares and then it cuts all of the sentiments out at once in perfect little strips. So I thought that was kind of fun. Next, I started working on my bunny background, and I used a little bit of temporary adhesive to hold my cardstock in place in my stamp platform. I inked up that background stamp with My Favorite Things Extreme Black Hybrid ink, and I did stamp it a couple of times just to make sure that I got a really good impression. And at the time of this voiceover, I still have a little bit of a cold, but hopefully when I post this video, I won't. So please pardon my stuffy, cold-sounding voice. Anyway, after I stamped the background, I took it out of my stamp platform, and I stamped in ears for 5 of the bunnies using cotton candy ink from My Favorite Things. I also stamped their little cheeks using the same cotton candy ink. And for the final bunny, I used the Summer Splash ink and the striped ears stamp for that last bunny. For whatever reason, I felt the need to do some coloring on these bunnies. So I just did a little bit of shading at the bottom of their ears and around the sides of their face. I started with E42, then I blended that out with E41, and then just did a quick swipe with my colorless blender just to soften some of those harsher edges. Next, I stamped the carrot from the Happy Hoppy set 5 times with My Favorite Things Extreme Black Hybrid ink. And for all 3 of these cards, I'm using Neenah Classic Crest 80-pound cardstock. I did quick and easy coloring on the carrots. I started with my darkest color to just add in some of the shading on the carrot itself. And then for the carrot top, I just used 2 different shades of green. I wasn't trying to get perfect blending. It's a pretty small image. So 2 color blend for the carrot and 2 color blend for the carrot top worked good for me. And then I went out of the lines, so I used my colorless blender to try and pick that up a little bit. Off screen, I had die cut the bunnies and the carrots, and I used one of the sentiment strips. I arranged them on a piece of cardstock just to get the placement. Once I was happy with the placement, I took a piece of press and seal and laid that on top of the stamped and die cut images, pressed down to hold them in place, and then pulled the cardstock away from the press and seal. Next, I put a bunch of foam tape on the back of the bunnies, and I had cut a piece of white cardstock with the largest stitched rectangle die from the Stacks 1 set by My Favorite Things and adhered that to the front of a top folding A2 size note card. I added a little bit of liquid glue to the back side of the carrots that are stuck to the press and seal, and I noticed that one of my carrots moved a little bit, so I decided I better take that off, and I set that off to the side. Next, I placed the images on my card where I wanted them to be and peeled off the press and seal. And voila, they all stayed in place with the exception of that one carrot. But that was an easy fix. I just picked it up with my tweezers and put it back into place. Pressed down those carrots really well since I used liquid glue on that. And then I grabbed my white gel pen because I still had a little bit of orange sticking out on the edge there. So I just went over that to cover that up. And then to make that little bunny with the blue ears stand out just a little bit more, I grabbed my Wink of Stella glitter pen and went over the inside of his ears as well as his cheeks. Moving on to the second card, since I had so many bunnies left over on the first panel that I had stamped, I thought I could whip out a second card pretty quickly. So I took some Summer Splash ink from My Favorite Things, Lulu Lavender Memento ink, and Cotton Candy ink from My Favorite Things, and finished stamping up 3 of those bunnies, and then I ran those through my die cut machine as well. Using the Blueprints 27 die set from My Favorite Things, I cut a piece of patterned paper using the scalloped die, and then I cut the frame that's also part of Blueprints 27 from white cardstock. I adhered the white frame to this scalloped rectangle with liquid glue. Next, I adhered that panel to the front of a landscape A2 sized note card. I put foam tape on the back of those bunnies and just put them into place inside those squares. For the word hello, I die cut it 3 times from white cardstock, and you'll see that there's ink on the back of the bottom layer there, and that's because if I color something and I'm not happy with it, it goes into my scrap pile, and I use that to die cut when I do a lot of layering. Anyway, I used liquid glue to adhere that to the front of the card. I used one of the Easter mini strips and just cut off the word hi and adhered that down into place using liquid glue, and that finishes up my second card. For the third card, I thought that I could use up a bunch of scraps that I had in my drawer of colored cardstock. So I placed the background stamp on top of my nonstick craft sheet, inked it up with VersaFine Onyx Black ink, and then just placed the strips of different colors of cardstock over it, just so that I could get a couple of clear impressions on bunnies. Then, after I had all of those stamped out, I filled in the ears with just the solid ear stamp, and I just used the VersaFine Onyx Black ink for that. Went through my little strips of bunnies and die cut one from each color of the cardstock, and then arranged them onto a white panel that I had also run through my die cut machine with the largest rectangle from the Stacks 1 die. I did put some foam tape on the back of each bunny so they would be popped up, and I also put foam tape on the back of that sentiment strip, which apparently I had a hard time getting that lined up straight. When I did finally get the sentiment straight, I just continued to adhere down the rest of the bunnies. Once those were all adhered, I used a little bit of liquid glue on the back side of that panel and adhered it to the front of a top folding A2 sized note card. And there you have it, 3 quick and easy cards using the Hop to It background stamp set from Tailored Expressions, along with a few other goodies. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you've not yet subscribed, I'd love it if you would. And don't forget to ring the bell so you're notified every time a new video is posted. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.